A warning to all about to listen to this podcast. The following audio may contain spoilers, inappropriate language for younger viewers, and those who are easily offended, and above all, bad opinions. You have been warned, but for now, let's get on with the show.
Hey everybody, it's me, Ego, from the TheAnimeAbroadPodcast. I'm on my own for this podcast because everyone else has terrible opinions. So sit back and listen to my equally awful ones. The show's title will probably be some awful pun like Ego Without Amigos or something just as bad. Whatever it ends up being, blame Archer, he's usually to blame, even if he had nothing to do with it. Alright, so this podcast is mostly about what the fuck I've been watching recently, which has been a whole assortment of things. It actually really surprises me because I don't usually watch multiple shows at one time or watch shows as they're airing. But for whatever reason, I decided to pick up a few from this season and just sit down and watch them without caring when the next episode is going to come out. In fact, I started watching some of a few episodes into the season just because I felt bored, waiting for the ones I'd already started watching. And now I'm stuck watching a bunch of shows week to week. And now onto the shows themselves. I'll try to do a breakdown starting with their opening themes and then actually moving on to the content of each show. Not saying they'll all have content, just whatever there is that classifies as content. Alright, so let's start with Argevollen. Shirogane no Ishi Argevollen. I have no idea how to actually pronounce this because they say it weird. It's like German mixed in with Japanese. Whatever. So let's start off with the OP, the opening's theme. Seems pretty damn generic. I'm not even going to bother reviewing it because it's not especially awful or great, and that kind of just fits the show perfectly. So I actually started watching this show because I just kind of felt jealous of everybody else getting picked a show that they had to watch, and I said, hey Bleeark, give me a show. Give me a show and I'll watch the whole damn season, no matter what it is. And he picked Shirogane no Ishi. And then I said, alright, I'll give Argevollen a shot. And he's like, what's Argevollen? Oh great. Fantastic. Thank you, Bleeark. And so I was like, alright, I'm not really into mecha. And the closest I've really ever gone is like almost all of Macross, STF Macross, the original. So let's see how this works. He's like, wait, it's a mecha? Oh, whoops. Did not know that. This is probably the show that I'll review the longest because I've watched the most episodes of it. Or not even, but I've watched it more in depth than any of the others. Let's start off with the first episode. Okay, setup. 2 warring factions, each with giant robots. Shocking. How so very shocking. Not a generic mecha? Yeah. Let's move on. Alright, so they're at war, and this one kid is controlling a mech, and he's piloting it, but apparently not the top of his class at it. And so as a result, he's kind of just whatever. Nobody really knows about him. He's kind of just the kid who drives that mech. And at the end of the episode, the first episode, so by the way, spoilers, so many spoilers, he just ends up saving this one chick because nobody else would, and she somehow happens to have a mech, a different one that's completely unlike any others, and he's surprisingly, in the second episode, you find out the only one who can pilot it now. Sound familiar? No, not at all, right? And of course, that's how the first episode meshes into the second one, which is basically just a setup for him continuing to use the suit and suddenly proving his worth, kind of. The third episode is about him displaying that same heroic tactic that he displayed in the first one and being foolhardy and stupid and yet being the only one who can pilot the mech and actually doing a good job at it. Surprising. Not a generic mecha at all, right? Anyway, moving on. I said I'd do a longer bit on Argevollen, but I really don't want to. I hope it transforms into something better because so far the plot's very, very generic. The characters are blank. They don't do anything. They're just there for piloting the mechs. I wish so many shows would stop doing this because it's really, really boring. And I really want to be interested because giant robots fighting one another should be the most awesome thing in the world. But for some reason, it's really not. Moving on. Zankyou no Terror. I probably pronounced that horribly. Maybe it means thank you. I don't think so. I didn't actually watch the OP for this one because I only watched the first episode and it wasn't in the first episode. So there goes that part of my review. The show actually starts off really well and introduces a bunch of different roles for each character, as mentor, as partner, as classmate, friend, enemy, rival, antagonist. It really seems to get the ball rolling for really, really good season because, I mean, I want to see the characters grow. I want to see them develop. I want to watch the show for finding out more about the characters. That one nightmare that the older guy had, or the taller guy had, I don't even know their names at this point. That was amazing because it really showed a lot about his character and really showed a lot about their relationship. The rest of the show seems kind of generic terrorism nonsense. I mean, I want to know their motives. That's the more important part to me, and that's what I'll keep watching the show for. The plot doesn't really matter to me at that point. I want to watch the show for these characters. Let's move on to Tokyo ESP. I don't really know a lot about this show. I watched the first episode because I was bored, because I got tired of waiting for other episodes. It just seems like a clusterfuck to me, because everything is moving so quickly, and yet one half of the episode is completely disjointed from the other. The Espers arrive, they take over Tokyo, and then suddenly there's one very localized group of Espers just talking. It's kind of really, really jarring because they don't do anything. Where's that first half of the show? Where's the badass who captured the government and killed everybody? I don't really see how this show is going to really mesh itself together. This seems like two diametrically opposed things. I don't know if I'm missing something from transition to manga, from manga to anime, but hopefully it makes a little bit more sense. Maybe I'm missing something from like a previous season even. For some reason it seems like that much. I'll try to do more research. If I'm wrong, correct me, but otherwise I don't really see what the appeal is. Once again, I didn't watch the OP because it wasn't in the first episode. Moving on. The last show I wanted to review for this segment was Tokyo Ghoul. This is one of the most popular shows right now, and for good reason. It's good psychological thriller. It's very, very creative in what it does. It just captures a whole new element of the human psyche interaction between humans and other monster creature things, namely ghouls, but puts them inside one person, which isn't often done. They're actually split personality most of the time, and he still has the mind of a human, but he has all the cravings of a ghoul. That's ridiculous. You kind of put yourself in that position. You see how he's feeling. It's very, very striking to you. You want to know what he's going to do, what's going to happen to him. And he seems like a very generic, weak character at first, but then he has the guts to try to stab himself just to see if he's a ghoul. And it's amazing. He like actually goes through a progression of like psychological events where he basically captures what everyone would do in that situation. What would you try first? Would you eat a bunch of things? Probably, because that's the first thing you heard about. Would you stab yourself? Maybe not, unless you were a little psychologically disturbed, like this kid. And I mean, think about it. He just went through this really traumatic experience where this girl he thought was cute tried to eat him. That's a little terrifying, if not a whole lot terrifying. The show is actually moving in a really strange direction because there doesn't seem to be any major antagonist at this point, and it doesn't really tell you who to root for at this point because you're rooting for what, cannibals? No, you're rooting for humans who are killing these creatures who are forced to eat and driving them into hiding and forming their own organizations. It's kind of strange. You don't really know what to root for, what to expect, what kind of organizations are there. The latest episode, 4. I'm not sure if it's the latest. Might have been second to last. That episode is kind of really striking in its fact that there's a high class society that acts just like some ancient Roman gladiatorial combat construction. It's a combination of humanity at its worst and ghouls at their best. And somehow they chose to include that. And that makes the show a lot better. That makes the show so much more captivating. It makes the show more realistic. And that's the reason I'm going to continue. For some reason, for some people, it's a bit droll because it's not really targeting anything right now. There's no central plot focus. Sure, there's a couple of good guys coming after ghouls, if they're even good guys. But other than that, nothing's really happening. Just gonna keep watching to see something exciting happen. And I really liked what I've seen so far because the show really, really captures psychological thriller, and that's perfect. I actually have one last show that I completely skipped over. Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-kun. This is actually the latest show that I picked up, and I watched the last 4 episodes of it really quickly. This is one show that I actually can't wait for the next episode for, because the other ones, sure, I can wait a little bit. For some reason, I'm okay with waiting this time. But this one, I want to see the next one. And it's not even like a plot-focused show. It's not suspense or thriller or anything. It's about these few high school kids who are drawing manga. And it's just really fun. It has a lot of references to other anime like Cromartie and Clanad. And it's brilliant. The animation style, the drawing style is pretty great. And it's funny. It's not even generic. It makes fun of like a lot of romantic comedy genre material, and it turns it on its head. It becomes a foil for itself by inverting character roles so often, and I really want to see that in the future. And the OP for that one was actually really fun. Definitely worth a listen. It's fun just like the rest of the show, and pretty clever. The lyrics are romantic, but the animation playing during it is completely comedic, and that just sets the tone for the whole rest of the show. Alright, that's all I got this time. Join me next time on, I guess, what's now Ego Without Amigos. See ya. And by the way, shit out of 0, Arch.
Go fuck yourself, Ego.